Florian Plettenberg is quite a prominent name and journalist on Sky Sports. He's their Bundesliga reporter. So if there's any news over in Germany, he's the guy that Sky Sports get on to give that update. And he's a really good source of information if you want to keep up to date on the big stories from the Bundesliga. He's the one that's been leading the fact that Ralf Rangnick may become the new Bayern Munich boss. So he's got a lot of credibility. He gets a lot of things right. And I quite like him for German football news. But now and again, he has a little update on West Ham, and that's come round once more. So I think he's quite prominent for the Bundesliga news, but he's also becoming quite important for the West Ham news because of Tim Steidten. And that's my opinion. I must make this clear. I am not saying Tim Steidten is the one that gives Florian Plettenberg this information. It's my opinion that Tim Steidten is the one that gives Plettenberg this information, and that's it. It's just my thoughts. And the reason being is pre-Tim Steidten, not once did he mention West Ham. He never had an update or news or anything regarding West Ham. Why would he? He's Bundesliga based. He's based around German. His whole profile is around what happens in German football. So why would he do updates on West Ham? But that question works both ways. Well, why is he still doing updates on West Ham? Now, there is a little bit of sort of a German aspect here, not just Tim Steidten, but in regards to the manager, there is a manager that's based in Germany right now on his update. However, pre-Tim Steidten, not once did he mention the Hammers. Post-Tim Steidten, he had the exclusive on Konstantinos Mavropanos join us. Fabrizio Romano got the Mohamed Kudus one, and Plettenberg got the Mavropanos one. Now, there's obviously a bit of a natural connection there in the sense that we signed Mavropanos from the Bundesliga, so he would have been over it anyway. But he still continues to have updates regarding West Ham. He did it earlier on the year in regards to Steidten potentially going to Liverpool, and this morning he's done an update regarding West Ham's pursuit of a manager to replace David Moyes should he go at the end of the season. Now that's what we're discussing today. If you're new around here, please do subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like on it by clicking the thumbs up. Both things help out the channel a lot, help out this video in particular, and make me very happy. What's interesting, actually we'll deal with the interesting part in a second, but let's give you the update. First thing he said was Amorim remains top of the list for West Ham. There's quite a lot of news regarding Ruben Amorim today. Over in Portugal, it was being reported that it was actually Chelsea that paid for Amorim's flights to London. It was actually Chelsea that held a meeting with him because they're going to get rid of Pochettino at the end of the season, and he is the guy that they want to replace him. Since then, it's came out, and Matt Law, who's very good when it comes to Chelsea news, very, very reliable when it comes to Chelsea news, he's put up an update saying Chelsea deny all this completely. Now, they would do that because obviously Pochettino's still in a job at the minute, and I don't think anyone's certain whether he's staying or not, so it would make sense for Chelsea to deny this. But West Ham also haven't denied that they had a meeting with Amorim, and I think it's something the club would usually do. All this speculation around us, I still think it was us that met up with Ruben Amorim and paid for his flights, although Portugal are reporting was actually Chelsea. But Florian says that West Ham still have him at the top of the list. Like I said the other day, the update he did on Saturday, not once did he apologise for meeting West Ham or Chelsea. The only thing he apologised for, in my opinion, was the timing. So it would make sense because while I think he's played West Ham a little bit and used West Ham to get eyes on him and make himself available to other clubs, it's quite a serious thing to come over for a meeting and stuff, and there must be a bit of credibility to this links and story, and Tim Steidten's hopefully done his homework. But Plettenberg says Amorim is still top of the list for us to replace David Moyes. Lopetegui is still also on the list. That's what he stated. Steinberg yesterday, the West Ham journalist and in the know, said that Lopetegui isn't dead cert to join AC Milan as it was believed over the weekend, and he still is on the West Ham shortlist. I am getting worried again. I'm getting worried. I've been worried non-stop. The AC Milan thing came around over the weekend. I was genuinely happy. I felt positive that he was going to AC Milan. Now that one's cooling and he's been linked to West Ham again. I'm starting to worry once more. I really do not want him. And I know he's a good manager. I'm not saying he's a bad manager. I just don't want him at my club. I think Steve Cooper's a good manager. I think Graham Potter's a good manager. But I don't necessarily want to see them as the next West Ham manager. And it's the same for footballers. There's some players I think are good, but I don't want to see them at our club for whatever reason. Lopetegui massively falls into that category. it would be very underwhelming, and it would be very David Sullivan, and that's part of the reason I don't want him, because I firmly believe Lopetegui is Sullivan's pick and not Tim Steidten's. That is what would concern me. He goes on to say, another candidate is Fonseca, due to his style of play. We know that, we've covered that, Gonzo's covered that, I'll cover it later on this week or next week. The only manager I've ever researched, but because doing this for 4 years now, properly, seriously, 3 years. 3 years we've been doing this seriously, and I mean you can debate that all you want, but in our eyes we've been doing this seriously for 3 years. We've only ever had David Moyes as manager, so all this speculation regarding new managers, I've dismissed it pretty quickly because I've never believed it. Last season, it'll be this. Never really believed it because I always thought they would keep Moyes. Now's the first time I felt that we might see a managerial change since we've been doing YouTube seriously, not properly, seriously, and that's why I've been researching a little bit of him. And then lastly, and this is perhaps the most interesting part of the update, he said West Ham is also keen on Tuchel's situation as sporting director Steidten holds him in very high regard. Tuchel ready to return to the Premier League in summer, and he signs off with a little tick. The interesting thing about that, there's two aspects there. One, Steidten holds him in high regard, not David Sullivan, Steidten. And two, how would he know? How would he know Steidten holds him in high regard? Unless Steidten's told him. This is just my opinion. I think Steidten checks in maybe with Plettenberg and Fabrizio Romano and uses that to his benefit. I've raised my concerns over this in the past, and the subscribers have given good reasons as to why it's perhaps a good thing as well. I've softened my stance a lot in regards to Steidten feeding them information, because it's not the end of the world, is it? And it's nothing too sort of decisive. But to know that Steidten holds him in high regard, you can only really get that from one place, in my opinion. I guess the other interesting thing is Tuchel is ready for a return to the Premier League, or open to return to the Premier League. I believe he's still got property in London. I may have read that ages ago, and that might not be the case anymore, but certainly I recall reading that when he'd left Chelsea, he retained his property in London just in case another Premier League job comes up, and that's where he wants to have ties to. I still think Tuchel's possible. I still think he's possible. I remember covering this pretty much as soon as it was announced that he'd be leaving Bayern Munich at the end of the season. They obviously play Real Madrid tonight in the Champions League, and he could go out on high, could go on and win that competition. Although I think it'll be a Real Madrid PSG final, but we shall see. But I remember covering it at the time thinking, I think there's something in that one, because I understand if Sullivan has some reservations over some of Steidten's picks, right? I get it. If Sullivan is a little bit unsure over Ruben Amorim, I get it. It's a lot of money to pay out just to break him out of the contract in terms of wages. You're looking at probably, and just for Amorim, about a £50 million contract. It's a lot of money. And then you've got his team that comes with him in terms of coaches, so on and so forth. It's a substantial investment. So Sullivan will want to be 100% sure that that's the guy in order to make that much financial commitment. So I get his reservations. Even Fonseca, who's never managed in the Premier League, I would understand that Sullivan would have some reservations. I don't agree with them, by the way. This is where sometimes this... I've noticed over the 3 years while doing YouTube seriously and not properly, sometimes people... either I don't do it correctly or people misunderstand it. That's sure, it's a bit of both probably. But what I think will happen and what I predict is not my opinion. So I can see why Sullivan would have reservations over Fonseca. Before someone says, why do you have reservations? I do not have reservations. But I'm trying to look at it from David Sullivan's perspective. But in terms of Thomas Tuchel, I struggle to see why there would be any. And I know he has falling out at every club he's been at, and he's difficult to get on with. Let's go back to what was on that shortlist. Julen Lopetegui. He's hardly Mr. Easy to get on with himself, is he? He left Wolves because he wasn't being backed. And I get it. I understand why he left. And, Gary O'Neill, who is quite outspoken, to be fair, as I always say, Gary O'Neill is a rookie manager is speaking the same things that Lopetegui is. Literally last week, Gary O'Neill said, how often do you see a manager walking out of a Premier League club? It doesn't happen very often. It happens for a reason. He's basically said, I've got the same issues as the previous 2 or 3 managers had. So he's speaking out about the whole situation which saw Lopetegui left. But even if you discard that, you go back to Spain when he was manager of Spain, he said to people, you cannot negotiate. You cannot move clubs before we play this tournament. And he was negotiating with Real Madrid behind the Spanish FA's back the entire time. So he's hardly got a squeaky clean record. So if that's going to put Sullivan off Tuchel, it's got to put him off Lopetegui. Clearly, he's not too bothered by Lopetegui's, I think, trail of destruction might be a bit harsh, but concerns over why he has left his previous positions, then you've got to do the same with Tuchel. Steidten, of course, famously was going to work with him at Chelsea, hence why Tim Steidten ended up having to leave Bayer Leverkusen, because they found out that he was trying to go work at Chelsea and then put him on garden leave, mutual consent, cheerio, and then off to West Ham he came eventually. So I think the Tuchel one has a lot of merit, and I think I wouldn't be surprised by that one. I think it's a lot more likely than some would suggest, and it's a lot more likely than perhaps some would make on. I think the Tuchel one has a lot of credibility, that rumour, and why wouldn't it? You know, a manager who's done quite well, I say quite well, he's won trophies in his career, a free agent at the end of the season, has ties to London, he's done it in the Premier League, which is David Sullivan's biggest stumbling block, and he's free, his second biggest stumbling block. There you go, tick tick Sullivan. And Steidten holds him in high regard, according to a very prominent reporter in Germany, who may or may not have links to Tim Steidten. It's my opinion he has. In regards to my opinion on all of that, I don't want Julen Lopetegui, but Amorim one, I find myself changing my mind on it quite a lot. I'm finding it difficult to really analyse. I think sometimes you look at certain rumours and you can come to a conclusion pretty quickly, and it's quite an easy one to come to sometimes. But the Amorim one, I'm finding it difficult because on one hand, I think he played West Ham, and because I felt it was ambitious, as soon as we were linked to him, I thought it was a bit too ambitious. That plays into why I think he played us. But on the other hand, coming over for a meeting is quite significant, and there's quite prominent reporters, Plettenberg included now, suggesting that this is not done yet. And the one person that suggested it wasn't done originally was David Ornstein. And the reason David Ornstein is important is because he was the one that broke the story. He was the first journalist to say West Ham are in talks with Ruben Amorim. And as far as I'm aware, there's only one place he can get that from, and that's Ruben Amorim's side of things. It won't be Sporting's, it won't be West Ham's side of things, because our lot were unaware. Those who report on West Ham specifically were second to the story. By Ornstein had it, he led with it. So my analysis is he's only got that from one place, and that is Raul Costa. I keep calling him Raul Costa, and I've yet to Google if that's his agent, but it's in my head somewhere that Raul Costa is Amorim's agent. I'm sticking with it, right? I'm convinced he's got it from Raul Costa. Last week, as the stories, it all exploded, and then very quickly it said that he doesn't want it, he's not coming, he went back and he's sorry, blah blah blah. And there was a video with David Ornstein last week, which has gone under the radar a little bit, I think. And in that video, he basically said, it's not dead. He didn't make a big deal about it. He just said that Amorim met West Ham and it looks unlikely to happen at this point. But he certainly didn't say there's no chance. He left it wide open. And I thought it was interesting because of where I believe he got that information from and where I believe he would get an update from. And if he has had an update and his opinion off the back of that is it's not dead, that's somewhat encouraging. So the Amorim one, I'm a little bit... Watch this space. That's what I'm saying. I'm not getting excited. I'm not getting my hopes up. I don't think it'll happen. But I don't know. I feel like it's not quite as dead as I thought it was last week when all those stories came out that he was practically laughing at West Ham and he decided he didn't fancy the job. But anyway, anyone but Lopetegui, eh? Maybe not quite that. Definitely wouldn't want Steve Bruce over Julen Lopetegui. AC Milan, can you please come get your man?